あー、
Alrighty, so we're jumping straight into it. Big surprises to catch, I guess now that we have an audience, to catch everybody up as to our concept here. After Zack and I played last time, we thought this is fun, but it's time for us to get some structure to our content. It's time for us to really just put out value, put out entertainment to people. So what we've gone with is, since then, which has been, how long has it been since we had this conversation? I'm trying to remember. Do you remember?
Oh, only a few days, right? Like a week at most.
Yeah, let's say we've been sitting on this a week. Plenty of time to pick, and now I'm realizing I didn't really zone in on the criteria, but basically what it was is we want to hone in on a champion, a class, and preferably an element to the point where we could do a first draft of a deck concept, a first draft of a deck list. This deck list should represent for us what we're hoping to refine and work on to put up against the theoretical meta. So not just what you and I play against each other normally, but against the boogeymen that exist in this world, against the net decks and all those try-hard winners. We're going to take them down with
some real actual decks.
Well, you might take them down with some real actual decks. I'm going to do my best to emulate them because I can't beat them, so I'm joining them.
Okay.
I'm the heel of this story. And
I'm definitely the underdog then because I've zigged where everyone else is zagged. That's fine.
Well, I don't know, maybe. I'm looking forward to hearing like your thought process behind this. So I've only seen the champion you chose and the element as I put it into the tab. Yep. But Zach, you chose Vanitas.
I did.
Another Bishonen. You just can't stay away from them.
Yes.
So, yeah, the premise was somebody you're interested in to kind of take into a potential tournament setting. Just give me your thoughts on Vanitas. What's appealing to him? What do you want to do?
Yeah, cool. So I've been on a bit of a wind train recently.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to continue with that. I was wanting to go something a bit aggro.
Yeah, Vanitas, from what I can see, does that.
Yeah, and I think any hero or any champion rather that caps at level 2 is going to lean aggressive or like, he wants to win in the short term because without that level 3 champion and unlocking that additional element, you don't have all those like the really high value, like the big power cards.
Yeah, absolutely. You've also got a lower health pool, right? You don't have like quite as much steam in the tank.
100%.
No, absolutely. So there's a bit of synergy there. I like it.
And so a lot of it was just this game can get quite complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces, but was something I thought I could test and then refine quite efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that I had sort of gotten to the point of wrapping my head around just based on our games, was that sort of low to the ground, very short-term, sort of aggressive deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you tried out Xander and seemed to like the way he was functioning. You were playing some Tenoris, which, while having access to a level 3, was still a relatively, from at least the exploration we were doing, a relatively ally-centric strategy, right? And while it might not be balls to the walls, like rush you down, bash you up, you were definitely flinging bodies at your opponent, and they were your path to victory.
Yeah, and that deck really, it may not have been aggressive, but it was assertive, right? Like it wanted to take control of the board and hold that line.
Mm-hmm.
And it was those games where you sort of knocked out a couple of my creatures before I could get the foster off, or just in general, you kept the board relatively clear, were the games I struggled to come back and generally didn't win.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got a clear, like, kind of win condition there, which when people talk win conditions, I think the shadow, what, the shadow of it, the absence of the win condition informs your loss condition, right? Like, for instance, at certain points in the game, especially like later on, having nothing on the board doesn't mean that you're losing, right? For some decks. Whereas for other decks, having an empty board at a later turn, or even just a mid-turn can be quite bad. You're like, oh, I'm gonna have to build up some momentum here. And given, your archetype and the way your deck functions, that can be a real uphill battle. All right, so I'm gonna just had Vanissus level 2 showing on the screen here for ages, but to do it live, just because I'm like, you can't see what I'm looking at, I'll interrogate you as to your deck choice. So
okay,
your card choice. So I'll put it to you again first. What is your deck's win condition? What are you hoping to achieve with what you've created here? How are you going to beat your opponent?
Yeah, so it's mostly allies, but then there is also the Dominating Strike / Vanitas's ability, which can push through a lot of damage quite quickly.
Yep. Fun that it is unique to him.
Yes, yeah, and that's also pretty cool. So what I did this morning actually was I booted up the Xander, like the top tier tournament winning Xander deck. Kind of played it, just sort of like drew a hand, played out a few turns, to see how quickly it could deal 25 damage.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, okay, cool. I like this approach.
I found that it just always, I played it like 3 times through. And it always
any more times would be redundant. Like, I'm glad you stopped there. You would have corrupted the data.
Yeah. But it always got through on turn 4.
Gee, hang on. So 25 on turn. Sorry, 25 on turn 4.
At least 25. Sometimes it was in the 30s.
Yeah, cool.
So, and the sort of mechanic here, and not that this really strictly emulates the pressure that an opponent would put on you, but the turn after an ally came out, I'd remove it as dead from the board, right? So, because otherwise, you play something on turn 1, it accounts for like 15 points of damage or something because you've counted it every time for. So yeah, every ally only got 2 hits in theory. But I'd make like an extra turn for like stealth or something. But so that was, I'm like, that's the gold standard.
I like it.
And like quite a bit of overkill in most cases, on most draws. So I found that this deck always got there at least on turn 5. Most of the time could get there on turn 4, but didn't quite with as much overkill. Like, it would often, if it got there on turn 4, it was kind of like just getting across the line. There wasn't a lot of leeway in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely room to move towards that sort of objective, that goal. But I was still reasonably happy with the speed that it was coming out at.
Yeah, cool. I like that. And also, I mean, I think that approach is really good in that it's given you a very solid like goal and also lens to analyze your deck through.
Yeah.
Like, kind of you go.
I was going to say that was another reason why I chose something that was a bit more aggressive, because that I don't think that sort of shadow boxing approach. I mean, you can grab a long-term control deck and draw a hand and see how consistent it is and sort of play it out. But I don't think that sort of like clocking the damage per turn sort of thing on a control deck is necessarily going to give you a usable. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that's part of why I want to be aggressive, because I felt like I could evaluate what the deck was doing a little bit better just sort of on the face of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this would be interesting because like I was doing a bit of research on my own side. Not really. I didn't do anything as practical as testing out the speed of damage over turns, but I did do a bit of research, and it's interesting to kind of compare the different mindsets, I guess, that people take into games. Pretty much any game, right? There's that problem-solving aspect to it, and everybody has their own forms of problem-solving as well as priorities in terms of like what's important in a game towards not just winning, but I guess also your approach to it. I won't derail us with conversations about like especially with like card games and games where you can customize things, at what point does the game stop, right? Because like you're playing when you play an opponent, etc. But are you still playing the game when you're deck building, when you're considering what decks to put in there? Like,
Yeah,
that's
right.
still
Yeah,
entertaining. And
I would consider that sort of part of the game for
yeah, or maybe different
sure.
phases of the game is definitely an aspect to it. Maybe
Yeah,
that's a podcast we
yeah,
do
yeah.
later on. But
Sure.
yeah, cool. We've kind of been talking about things from a bit of, this is my theory, this is what I'm aiming to do. I like your thought process on it. It's something that you can verify, but also most importantly, you can adjust. You can change your lens. You're not like tacked into
Mm.
it. But I guess putting a bow on it, what are you most excited about with this deck? What are the things that are just in your heart? You're like keen about this.
Yeah, cool. So
Nothing. You're just
it's
here to
probably the
get
first thing that's gonna
paid.
get. Yeah,
Just here for the money.
that's it, 100%. No, there's a little combo in here that is very cute, but I suspect, and like in playtesting it felt reasonably consistent. But I don't know, maybe it just crumbles and totally falls apart when faced with actual opposition.
I'm hovering
But
over the
I really
squirrels and the protector here, but give it to me. Did I call it?
oh well, that's easy. That's not it, but
That's
I mean, because
chump
that's easy.
play.
That one writes itself.
Okay, yeah. What's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
combo? Hit me.
yeah. No, it's the Wind Rider Invoker because I think it's just a really
Yeah,
like
okay.
it's a solid card if you can get it
Dear
on. But
God,
I
there's
of
so much
course, I mean,
swooshy swooshy on her. And a sigil.
oh, it's the swooshiest.
Damn. Okay. I see.
Yeah, true.
Already I'm sold. Continue.
Okay, but that requires enlightenment tokens, which I
It
don't
does.
organically generate.
Yeah.
Um, so I've got Ventus Staff of Zephyrs, which means that whenever I activate a wind element mage spell, it gets a refinement counter, and I can convert that refinement counter into an enlightenment counter.
Mm-hmm.
So and Venitas wants spells anyway because in his level
Oh,
2,
fuck yeah.
the spells give +1. So I'm running 4 different spells, 4 copies of each that are all mage spells.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 of which also just generate enlightenment counters as a function of the card, right?
Yeah, nice.
So
Okay, I'm on board.
being that if I'm looking at the Windrider Invoker in my hand, I bring out the Ventus staff,
Yeah.
hit one of the spells. I want the spell anyway, and there's some synergy there regardless. But then I can immediately go to 2 enlightenment counters, drop the Invoker, and that pushes through like 4 damage and replaces itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very importantly, replaces itself literally in hand. Like drawing to hand and drawing to, say, memory are two, they both say draw, but two very different effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I like it.
Yeah.
That's fun. Okay, cool. Are you ready for me to
Yes.
break your brain with what I'm taking?
What have you got?
I'm playing Diana in Fire. I am playing. Well, that's the intent. So, this is the deck list that I played against you last time.
Okay.
I didn't feel any real need to change it yet. So, like, because I'd kind of already deck built it and played it once already, right? Whereas you with Vanitas, you haven't tried him yet, so you'd be much more in the deck building mode and kind of approaching things. I guess for me, my thought process was all about like potential options of the cards I already own, as well as from what I've seen of the game thus far and what I've played, the kind of characters that I'm gravitating towards. Cleric, Astra Cleric was there as a potential. Diana obviously was a potential, like she's the one I chose in the end. And I was thinking about like Wind Lorraine. I was even thinking about Merlin. Like I was casting a pretty wide net of consideration. But in the end I went with Diana.
Yeah.
Mainly so my theory that I'm going with is I think this is an effective way of playing, but also it's a way that I like to think of the game. So we'll see how this evolves. But it's the idea of a good thing for a deck to have is to have the utility to go to vary the speed at which it applies its game plan. So
Yeah.
something like Merlin, at least from the way we've been playing, has a long-term plan, right? It's kind of like inevitability. The longer the game goes on, the heavier the more value it generates, the heavier its effects become, and especially things like that stinking horse. It kind of supports this theory, right? The stinking horse sits around, the stinking horse slows the game down, big time, at least for your opponent. This big speed bump for them to get through. And you can see how it protects your game plan, so the long term goes on, more value generate, and eventually, if you're playing like Fire Merlin, you're just going to smash your opponent's face in with a massive fireball or something like that, or just having enough interaction and removal with the Water Merlin you used against me. That one's going to kind of generate value. So fine, but I was going to say, but it doesn't have that much control over speed, right? Because
I'd probably say that's true.
Yeah, well, I was. That's my, kind of my theory. That's the thing I'm putting forward here. It is worth saying a lot of those Merlin decks are kind of like hybrid Merlins, where, and I haven't seen it played too much, but seeing the way Lorraine's in there with all those swords and stuff, I think they have that in there to be able to go like, oh, if my opponent isn't, like, maybe it's also for the mirror match. I'm jumping all over the shop here because I haven't really rehearsed this theory on it, but Merlin v Merlin, I think the person wins there is the one who like does better trades, but also like applies their game plan faster. In which case, putting pressure matters, right? Like having some swords. I assume this stuff matters. But that's the general idea. Whereas something like Xander, sorry to finish my thought on this concept of pace, something like Xander aims to finish the game very quickly, right? However, if Xander wants to play slowly, it can, but it's not gaining that much advantage from it, right? I don't think it's built to interact well with a longer timeline. So
no, it's not.
Yeah, right.
You don't take the level 3 champion, so there's not
no level 3 champion. And actually, whether you take a level 3 champion or not is probably a good indicator of whether at least you're planning to go into this amorphous mid-game that I feel I gesture towards. But also, so the biggest lens, so if we say the lens you were looking at your deck from was the lens of aggro and kind of a clock, the lens I'm going on it from is similar to this concept of a clock or pace, but it's going... but it's doing that with also an eye towards flexibility, I guess. And to jump straight ahead to the thing you go.
I was going to say that's important for a mid-range deck, right? Like you need to know when you're the aggressor and when you're kind of the defensive player, I suppose.
Yeah, I think like aggressor versus like value, right? Like you're slowing it down and trading specifically for value. I feel we're using a lot of magic language here, which is fine, but that's kind of the lens you and I both have the most experience through.
It's hard to unlearn that.
Yeah, and also like the concept of value in Magic, I think is a lot more crystallized. It's a lot more like defined than like usually it's a 2-for-1 trade. I use 1 card, you lose 2 cards. Value, perfect, excellent. There is obviously that in Grand Archive, but it doesn't feel the same. I won't, fully go off this tangent as to why not, but I don't think it's the same concept, and I don't think you can apply... The biggest thing, you can't apply it 1:1. The same maths don't work in this game. Concept, maybe?
Yeah, I agree with that.
The specific math, no, I don't think so. But, yeah, the thing I'm most excited about with Sylvia on this idea of pace, etc., is her interactions with Taser Shot. So Taser Shot being a disincentivizer for people leveling up means if you can get to, especially like level 3, and get Shadow's Twin out, and, double taser shot affect people from a advantageous position, it's not a hard lock, but if your opponent takes 8 unpreventable, oh yeah, 8 unpreventable damage from the taser shot, it significantly advances your game plan, right? Like your rush towards them being dead. Right, yeah. So your rush towards victory goes way up there, but like she's not locked into that, right? That's just like a cool thing that I'm excited about with her, and I would say that represents the biggest thing that I'm overall excited to experience when playing. Have I been saying Sylvie? I think I've been saying Sylvie.
You did say it once. You know what? You said it once.
Oh, I might as well have said it 1,000 times then, right? Like, stuff me. Hey, everybody who was annoyed by that should comment about it in the comments. Like, lots of comments about it. Just go to...
Well, as soon as they heard you say Sylvie, they're
like, oh, what is this? Yeah, they paused it and they're like, nah, this won't stand. But, like, comment twice if you like. You know, I really think it's important. You to really comment, like it, dislike it, all that jazz, right? All that's engagement. That's our call to action. Just
please leave an angry comment, dislike, unsubscribe,
resubscribe, tell your friends about us, tell them not to watch us, but don't tell them why, so they look us up and try and find out why. They're like, I don't get why you're so heated, man. It's just like a couple of chumps playing against, talking about, you know, decks and stuff. Or one guy did say that he was playing Sylvie when he was playing Diana, so I don't know what his deal is, but no, it's all good. Anyway, so that's what I'm interested about with this deck. From the little playtesting we've done together, her level 3s, there's not too many of those cards I'm running in here, but the Umbral Tithe mixed with the... where is it? There she is. Mixed with the Creeping Torment effects, that was a big reason where I became sold. Just this deck, which is like kind of, to my feeling, a bit mid-rangey. It's definitely not hyper aggro, but it's a bit mid-rangey. It's got a lot of interactions. There's a lot of fun things you can do with like manifesting bullets or guns ahead of time in the lead up to certain turns, with nice payoffs for it. All of this stuff is way up my alley. I'm like really keen to not just get more of the kind of experience I've had playing it, but also kind of unlock some subtleties of pace with how to play her. And I think a big, like the overarching thing I'm hoping from this, aside from having fun games, is that by playing Diana, I will be able to test my theory on this idea of like the relevance of pace in the game and how it like, you know, how it manifests when people are playing, and just get a better understanding of the game as a whole, right? Like, I want to play Diana so that I can play Grand Archive, learn about it, become better at it, and from that just become a better Grand Archive player, as opposed to playing, like, you know, I was going to say a meta deck, but just playing a deck to play that deck and get, you know how to play, like, even just knowing how to play Ranger, right? Like, it's going to be nice, but I want deeper insights, man. I want to know the true, not just how to do the bang. And
sure,
fingers crossed that's where we get to.
Yeah.
So yeah, does that all make sense? Hopefully I've been coherent with this idea of Diana.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had a lot of fun playing against Diana. She seems like a really cool champion.
Yeah,
the curses, the control. I guess they almost control elements. Like they really put the boot in sometimes with those. You slap enough of those curses down, it's really hard to move around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you just jogged my memory on one thing. Another appeal of it, I think, like, it has to work for it to actually be true, but I've always loved mid-range decks. I love their kind of bruisery flexibility, at least in Magic. However, the one thing I don't enjoy about them is how they tend to do okay against aggro, right? Like they're a little bit slower, but that means that they can play to value, and that generally means they've got the flexibility to be an aggro deck, whereas an aggro deck doesn't have that option, right? And so that's where they catch them. The usual scissors, paper, rock is that aggro beats control, mid-range beats aggro and control beats mid-range. And the anxiety of control decks hanging over my head when I play a card game, especially like when I'm like, yeah, I've got this mid-range deck I really like. Oh, sorry, and especially the way control decks tend to do quite well. Value decks tend to do quite well in card games. Just, I don't know. That's the way I feel. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it depends when you played your card game and what you played. But from Magic, blue is this big domineering force which has always been relevant in tournaments, and for the most part, at least when I was playing, just like ruled the roost. You either had to be running counter spells and removal and card draw. Oh, look, it's a tactic. It does itself. Or have a response to it. Anyway, with all that fear there, Diana having these creeping torments that she puts on decks which specifically hurt them for drawing cards feels really good. Like, I'm like, oh man, this is the mid-range deck I want with a little package of, go get stuff control player. They enjoy taking unpreventable damage. Like, I'm very keen for it.
Yeah.
And like Poetic Justice.
Oh, that was huge. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right. And Poetic Justice, that it kills people with like a bauble of abundance. Like, we're all gonna have it, but you have to pay taxes. But yeah, cool. So I'm really looking forward to this project. Did you have any final comments or questions before I kind of like wrap up our deck techs? Well, not even deck techs, but just our deck.
No, probably. Because I do agree with all of that commentary with regards to the aggro mid range. Because like I think part of the reason I played draft for so long was just I didn't feel like I didn't want to deal with like the blue control stuff, and you kind of didn't have to.
Yeah,
when you're a draft player, everything was just vaguely mid range.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, from what I've seen, that this game does do a much better job of preventing that sort of archetypal dominance within the meta. Because we've seen, that tournament recently where an aggro player won. So,
yeah, absolutely. I definitely think like that is going to be for sure a topic of conversation for a podcast, because that's like kind of like the dominance of archetypes and the effect they have on a meta and all that kind of jazz, whether you just play with friends or you actively engage with organized play, where like meta is a it's a hot topic. It's something people actively engage in, and it's something which is tracked. Wherever you land on that spectrum, control, like the way the game treats the various archetypes will vary. And I guess, sorry, it's in a roundabout way. What I'm trying to say is the archetype's always going to kind of exist, I think, but the way the game treats the archetype doesn't always have to be the same, right? And hopefully building off the point you were making, the difference between, it feels like we're going to be shitbagging Magic, but it's not. Like, Magic is still a fun game if you have fun with it, blah, 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 blah. However, when I play a spell and my opponent plays a counter spell, I don't have fun. And when that happens over many turns, it becomes a bit of a grind.
Yeah, and there's a light touch of that in here. Like, there is like one or two ways to negate card activations, right?
But like
but it doesn't. It's not oppressive.
Yeah, that we know of. Maybe there is an oppressive one, but yes, I don't. From what we've played, it doesn't feel oppressive to me yet. And so like there's the Astra one, which is hard negation. There is the blue ones, which are cost-dependent negation. However, it is worth stating that like there's and this is where I'm going to show my lack of, current cards. There's the ring, the blue ring, right? Which makes, there it is, the Viridian Protective Trinket, which you can pop to make water element cards cost 2 more to activate during your turn, right?
Oh, sure.
Oh god, you don't even need to pop it. It just sits there.
Well, that's yeah, it just threatens. Transactivation.
Yeah. But in any event, for me personally, I find like this, like still having a version of counterspells in the game, I do think it's good to have that aspect of interaction in a game. Like it's another design lever for the game to feel like varied and there
Yeah.
be different tactics. However, just because negation style effects can feel so gross, a gentle touch, a different touch to them, to the design helps, and I think that's been achieved so far in Grand Archive.
Sure.
Yeah. Don't push it though. Don't
I'd
push
agree with
it.
that.
People should
Yeah.
war. Don't push it. I'm happy there's allies here that just biff each other. That's where beauty is at. Just stupid little bodies smacking into each other, barkering each other, and all that jazz.
And then some fisticuffs.
Yeah, can't beat a good fisticuffs. Everything's got haste. It's great. Alrighty. So, I think moving forward, so that's where we're at now. These are our decks. Our plans are to probably do just a one-on-one with our decks that we've chosen against each other.
Yep.
And I don't have hard numbers on like how many videos or whatnot we'll do, but following that, the idea is that we kind of comb some of the sites for the meta decks and put each other's decks through the ringer against some of the meta boogeymen. So I've already done one call to action.
See how we
So please remember to dislike this video and comment about me saying that I'm running Sylvie when I'm actually running Diana. But in all seriousness, like, you and I don't have that deeper penetration into the meta and what's going on with the game. Like, we've just got our own closed meta, I think. And so I'd really welcome anybody giving suggestions of meta decks, even deck lists, if you've got like some links for us to have a look at. We'd love to put those up against the decks we're hoping to eventually take to a IRL event, which is the end goal here. That's kind of the idea. We're going to run these decks, put these decks through the ringer. We will be doing adjustments in between matches, and we'll probably make discussion content about that so you can kind of see what changes we make over time and our reasonings behind it. But yeah, more than welcome for people to throw at us the nastiest boogeymen, the real shit stompers, the meta killers, the things that make you want to sell your deck and, you know, put angry comments and emails to people. That's what we're after. And we'll do our best to find some of the nastier things ourselves. But yeah, with that said, looking forward to playing some more Grand Archive, and we will talk to you all later. Peace.
Gotcha.